So I'll return them to the sender, and the note attached will read, how I love to love you, I love to love you, I love to love you, I love to love you. Hi guys, and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. And continuing with my mini-series, which I'm calling The Greatest Frontman in Electronic Music History, today we are discussing one of my favorites, Andy Bell from Erasure. A special shout out to my producer friend Gareth Jones, who is the reason I'm doing this video, because the other day Gareth posted this video on his Facebook page. Have a look. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Damn. La la la. Whoa. Now, what I love about that video is I was sitting up watching TV. It was just after midnight the other night, and this video just popped up on Gareth's Facebook page. And what I love about that video is you obviously see the camera panning around Gareth's studio, which is the art lab, and you hear the iconic, unmistakable vocals of Andy Bell in the background. You're going, oh wow, he's working on an Erasure track. But then I love it when the camera eventually gets to a certain point and then pulls back and you go, oh my God, Andy Bell is actually in the room. And I had a bit of a fanboy moment there. So that was a great video to see. And man, I'm really excited about the, Gareth and Andy working together, because, they've obviously done some great work together. So anyway, I've been meaning to do this video on Andy Bell, and after I saw that, I got really enthused and excited, and I thought, well, let's just jump into that video right away. Now, this is going to be a free-flowing video. This is part of my series, which I started late last year, The Most Iconic Frontman in Electronic Music History. And in that series, we've spoken about Neil Tennant, we've spoken about Bernard Sumner, we've spoken about Gary Newman, and I really am in this series encouraging you to get involved and let me know who your favorite frontmen are in electronic music history. Now, it doesn't need to be from the 80s. It can be from any, electronic sort of based band or outfit. And I really am going to, at some point, get all of the votes, and then we're going to do a countdown in a video, which we're going to call the top 10 frontmen in electronic music history as voted for by you. So your participation is vital in this series. So what I will be doing in this video, as you know, it'll just be free-flowing, on the fly, unscripted. I'm just going to talk about Andy Bell, some of my feelings, and we'll just run through some of the songs. And I'm also going to demonstrate how I think it is that he uses his voice. Let's jump into it. Andy Bell will go down in history as one of the most iconic frontmen. Forget about electronic music, but just as a frontman in general. I remember I've dragged a lot of friends to Erasure concerts. Quite reluctantly sometimes they've come along, and by the end of the concert they always thank me, because it is so entertaining. And something that I like to illustrate about Erasure's music is it has a lot more depth than what people give it credit for on face value. In my time in piano bars, I've often done Erasure covers, either instrumentally or I've sang them on the piano, and very often people would come to me and go, my God, that was a great song, what is that? And much to their surprise, when I tell them it's an Erasure song, they go, really? Because I think a lot of people are very quick to dismiss a lot of electronic music, but I think Erasure does sometimes get dismissed as throwaway pop, because it's synthesized and all that kind of stuff. However, as you know, we're well known for on this channel for stripping away the electronics and just sort of focusing on the piano. Stripping the songs down and playing them on the piano allows you to hear the songs in a very naked and a very raw kind of way, and you are not distracted by the bells and the whistles and the synthesized sound, which I love, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. Now, the demonstrations I'm going to give you now regarding Andy Bell's voice, understand I'm not trying to sound like him, and very often when I'm demonstrating something, I will exaggerate the effect in order to hammer the point across, as I do when I coach people. You know, you need to overemphasize something to sometimes get the point across. But if we can start with Andy Bell's voice, what type of singer is he? Andy Bell is an ex-choir boy, apparently. I don't know how true that is, but it makes sense that he probably was. Now, what type of voice does he have as far as classical classification is concerned? Remember that the classical classifications of a voice are very dated, and that was usually just for choirs and things when they would put you in a group based on, you know, what your vocal range was. And I think a lot of people would classify Andy Bell as a tenor. But I've often said that I don't believe that singers should be, you know, rated according to how high they sing, but rather according to how low they can sing. And that is a deep subject which I cannot go into in this video. But I think that, to me, Andy Bell's natural voice, although he does sing in, you know, very often in a tenor register and very often in a bass, I would think he's classical choir classification if he was to be put in a choir. He'd probably be he'd probably be a baritone. I don't even think he's a tenor. Now, he can obviously reach tenor notes, and God, he can reach tenor high C and beyond. He's got a great range. But he does utilize you know, his head voice very, very well. People often confuse head voice and falsetto. And I've heard vocal coaches who sometimes interchangeably use the words, you know, falsetto and head voice, and they are not the same thing. But Andy really is one of the singers that can really utilize everything. He's got a very, very good natural bass sound. Listen to Andy Bell when he speaks. Oh, hi. He's got a really deep voice. It's deep. You know, he can sing really high, but his speaking voice is very, very deep. And okay, his speaking voice is very animated. He does, you know, because he's a very expressive kind of guy. There are many examples, but let me use an example which shows a great way how he utilizes his range from the very lowest notes to the very highest notes in his range. There are many examples, but something that jumps to the top of my head now is the song, Don't ever let me take you for granted. You've got your finger. And when it gets to this part, you've got your finger on the pulse of my soul. He goes really deep, and obviously in the studio, it's probably a very close miking technique. He'd come really close to the mic. You've got your finger on the pulse of my soul. Let me place a kiss in the small of your back. Love and protect you from the evils of this world. And then, baby, don't ever leave me stranded. There's a bit of blues there. And then he comes to the low notes again. Whoever said that the streets were paved with gold? You know, close to the mic to get that proximity effect. Well, I'm afraid we're all sadly mistaken. There's nothing here till we have someone to hold. Ooh, I love you with all the joy of living till the lights go down in New York City. Special love affair. There's magic in the air. And then we get to the chorus. You gotta shake me down, bring me round to my senses. Till I'm lost and found, you surround me with your senses. Now the S. I'm not going to belt it as loud as he does, but it is. I think you'll find when he does it, it's not as loud as you think it would be. It's quite effortless. There's nothing forced with Andy Bell's vocals. It's very free and flowing. I mean, I've spoken to Gareth about this. You know, when you're recording him in the room, he's got a very powerful voice, but nothing's forced. It all kind of just flows. Now, let's have a look at the top note when he goes to my senses. Now, a lot of people would say that is falsetto. That is not falsetto. That is a very light head voice. Remember, falsetto is when the chords do not come together. Falsetto, it's kind of like that kind of sound. I'm not very good at doing falsetto. Just understand that when Andy does a lot of the it's actually a very high head voice. And because he does the transitions from his lowest notes in his register, you know, right through his range, right through to the highest notes, and he doesn't have any breaks in between, it does make it sound like it's, you know, it's very sometimes difficult to tell, you know, which register is he in now. Now, don't worry about that if you're, you know, this is more sort of vocal coach or singer terminology. If you're not a singer or if you're just a casual fan, hopefully you'll find this interesting. But just understand that Andy really knows how to use his voice. The transition through his vocal range is very, very smooth and effortless. Now, I just want to sort of explain, I've spoken on my videos how different singers have different placement. Now, placement is where you place the sound within your, you know, within your head or your vocal cavity to achieve a certain sound. Once again, I'm not trying to sound like him, and I'm going to just exaggerate certain demonstrations just to prove a point. Let's take one of their greatest songs, A Little Respect, which starts on the C. I try to discover a little something to make me sweeter. I'm not going to turn this into a vocal lesson, but just to illustrate what I mean there. I try to discover, that is head voice. He does this kind of a lot, where he goes. It's kind of like a twang into the head voice, but it's not as crude as you know, like it's sort of like an Axl Rose. Remember, twang is the that sort of nasal resonance you use. But I find that when Andy uses his head voice, he directs the resonance to the sort of the soft palate, and the soft palate is that, so like the roof of the top of your mouth there, sort of just towards the back, where, you know, just where the throat opens. Stay with me here. So it's, I try to discover, there he comes, a little something to make me sweeter. Then he goes, and then when he gets to that part, he brings in the, what I like to call the lower larynx position. It's like when you yawn, you get that lower larynx position. Dave Vaughn used to sing a lot like that in the 80s. If you listen to I'm taking a ride with my best friend, it's kind of like when you yawn. Roland Orzabal as well. If you think of shout, let it all out, it's kind of like a lower. But with Andy, his voice flows real. It's really agile. It really moves. You know, he's one of the singers that really intrigues me, the way he's going from a lower larynx position almost instantly to sort of like a higher head voice and any sort of blend in between. A Little Respect is a classic example. I try to discover a little something to make me sweeter. There's back to the lower larynx position. Oh baby, refrain from breaking my heart. I'm so in love with you. So I'm so in love with you. Back into the lower larynx position. And it's effortless and it flows, and there's no strain or effort with this guy. It's just, he's got such a beautiful, beautiful tone. Of course, when we get to the so I hear you calling, oh baby, please. There's a light voice, and then give me a little respect. Okay, that's a head voice. It's not as loud as you think it would be. And then two, and then me. Okay, that's very dry. Remember, there's no reverb or anything. This is just a room mic. And me, they would put you know, they put delay and echo and reverb to that to make it go meh, to give it more of a soaring kind of effect. That's just one example, and we can go down a rabbit hole, and you will be pleased to know I am going to start a Erasure album review series, as I'm doing with my Depeche Mode album review series, and we'll go into a lot of detail. Just understand that as a singer, Andy Bell has an incredibly dynamic voice. There are so many different colors to it. Think of Blue Savannah song, oh, Blue Savannah song. It's so easy, so well, I'm not saying it's easy to sound like him. I'm not trying to sound like him, but it just soars. If you watch a gymnast, someone doing gymnastics is very difficult to do. But when you watch someone who's good at it, you know, it just seems effortless. And it's the same with Andy. His voice is just flowy. Somewhere across the desert, sometime in the early hours, feel the restless world on the open highway. See, it's quite light. Highway. It's just drifting. And when he gets to the bridge, my home is where the heart is. Sweet surrender to you only. I said my love to you. The register he's using there is a real sort of, it's what we call a mixed register. It's somewhere between the chest and the head voice. But once again, there's not only the lead part that he sings, but also in the records, the way he layers his voice. I'm thinking of Ship of Fools. I can't believe what is happening to me. My head is spinning. Now that small bass, sort of lower larynx position. The flowers in the trees are encapsulating me, and I was spinning. Then he goes a little bit higher, sort of still in chest voice, but slightly more to the head. He was a baby of the class, you know. He really didn't know that 1 and 1 was 2, 2 and 2 were 4. Down again. And then he was a baby of the class, you know. He really didn't know that, really didn't know that. Oh, what a fool, fool. And sometimes, depending on whether it's live, I've heard him do it differently. When he goes, oh, what a fool, he'll do it like that, fool, or he'll go, fool. He'll sometimes do it in falsetto, or he'll sometimes do it in head voice. This is what's so great about Andy Bell, is when he sings live, he is experienced and talented enough to be able to, you know, he can just improvise on a vocal, like on the fly. There are some singers that really need to rehearse certain things, and when they go live, they need to kind of, you know, sing the way they've rehearsed it. Andy Bell, not like that at all. He can, obviously he does have a sort of preferred way of singing certain songs, but he has surprised me on a lot of live performances where he will just improvise on the fly, and I'm like, oh wow. You know, as a vocal coach, I'm probably listening to it a lot differently and more in depth, but I just love him. But on Ship of Fools, and indeed any songs, listen to the vocal layering in the background. Whereas on the lead of Ship of Fools, it's woo, do we not sail on a ship of fools? Oh, but listen in the background, you've got all these high, sort of deep layered sounds. I've often talked about the feel-good factor in Erasure's music. I don't want to look like some kind of fool. I don't want to break my heart over you. Now, those type of songs. But then there are songs that are a lot deeper. I'm thinking of songs like Brother and Sister, Father of Mine, keep us together, keep us in line. There's an example. A lot we depend on, a lot we can do. Send love to mother, I'll be good to you. So much harmony is demonstrated in Erasure's songs, not only in the compositions and the music, but the vocal layering is incredible. This makes me think of one of my favorite songs from one of my favorite Erasure albums, which is Chorus, of course. Someone once said that Chorus is Erasure's Violator, so to speak. But here's another example of something that is very, very deep and mature. If we take Siren song. Ever faithful I endure to listen for the sound of the siren song. Ragged whispers of imprisoned sisters, cutting through real life, drawing me near. That is just like storytelling, and it has a real sort of like gothic, a very sort of, I don't know, like a 1700s, kind of 1800s, kind of like a classical thing going there. Cutting through real life, drawing me near. It's storytelling. The color of the pure in soul, like water, shall fill the cloudless sky. Then it gets to the whoa, 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 and you know, with a whoa on the top, trying to feel the splendor of it all. Embrace the honesty of nightfall. You know, if you just listen to those little piano parts and strip all the electronics away and just listen to the melody on a piano, I am a huge advocate of Erasure's songwriting. In fact, you know, all these bands these days, they often do these acoustic tours, and it would be fascinating to hear Erasure doing a kind of like Aha did a few years ago. They did like I think an acoustic tour. And, you know, it will show you the strength of their songs. You know, it's not all boom, boom, boom and electronics and stuff like that. It's just not that electronic music is boom, boom, boom. But, you know, to some people, they're quite snobbish about it. But, and I say I've got first-hand experience that, you know, in my time in piano bars and stuff, when you play their music on a piano, people will come to you and go, wow, this is a great song. And when you tell them it's Erasure, they go, really? We cannot dismiss it as throwaway pop. You really can't. Another sort of tender part of his upper register that he uses, I'm going to demonstrate that using this song called, was it So the Story Goes, from one of my favorite Erasure albums, which was I Say, I Say, I Say. I love that album. When he goes, I lift my eyes to the sound of the sky and I hear it like dust on the moon beneath my feet. Nothing to do with the time or the place. You see, it's light. Nothing to do with the time or the place, but I hear it. It's so tender and emotional, like dust on the moon. Back into the lower larynx position, beneath my feet. And, you know, he brings a lot. He also uses a lot of breath, which requires a lot of diaphragm control. Anyway, this video is turning into a vocal tuition thing, and that's not my intention. I really am just trying to illustrate, and maybe I should do a separate video on, you know, on separate songs and how Andy attacks them. Of course, if you guys want that. But I think as a frontman as well, you know, he's just his genuine likability, his flamboyance, and, you know, he's larger than life, but he's incredibly humble and, you know, kind of reserved at the same time, very shy, and an incredible artist. And I really hope to meet him someday, and I would love to interview him. It'll be an absolute dream come true for me. There you have it, a quick free flow of Andy Bell. We will do a lot more, you know, on his vocals, and when we do the Erasure album review series. As I say, I can only scratch the surface on a video like this. But what do you think of Andy Bell? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure you watch the rest of this series, because remember, it is your votes that will determine the video I put out eventually, which will be called the top 10 electronic music frontmen as rated for by you, and we will count them down from 10 to 1, and that'll be a lot of fun. A little bit of unashamed self-promotion. Check out this track, which has just come out. That's one of my original tracks from my new alias, which I'm calling VG, available now. Check it out, and thank you for your support as always. If you are new to this channel, welcome. Please hit the subscribe button. I hope you will jump on board with this fabulous community. And if you're in the middle of my Depeche Mode album review series, remember that part 4 on the B-sides is out next. My friends, comments below, lots of love, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Adios.